Well, good evening, everybody. It is good to be with you. Today, we are going to be talking about some of the recent TikTok abortion streams that I have had, or at least one of the recent TikTok abortion streams that I've had, multiple different conversations from that same stream. I've got about 3 different clips here to get through, but before we get into that, I would encourage you to share this stream, especially if you are on X. We want to make sure that this gets out to the masses because this will be a spectacular analysis of the conversations that I've had very recently. So like I've said, we've got 3 convos to get through. I'm very excited. So we'll jump into the first one right now, but make sure that you share so that other people can join in on the fun. I guess before we get into that first conversation, there is a variation here in intellectual rigor and, of course, the approach that the pro-choicers take, as there often is when I do these live streams. If you've watched any of them, you know that we have both the person who comes in with a super philosophically rigorous argument, or we might, in the next guest, have somebody who really doesn't have any argument at all. And so from the most recent stream that I have done, I tried to pull some conversations that I think really help represent that spectrum that I deal with night after night. So let's get into that first conversation, and then we'll go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the video, the clip that I have, and I'm going to jump in when I think some analysis is called for. Perfect. Look at that. Awesome. All right. Let's give it a run. But if you're still here and you've been here for a while, maybe keep tapping away. Maybe get a hot cocoa or something, enjoy. If you want to support what I'm doing, which I would hope you would, check me out at James__Weigel on X and Instagram. Hi, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Which is still true right now. So I would hope that you support the work that I'm doing by checking me out on the other social media platforms, including X. That's really been one of my big focuses, is growing that account. So I'll emphasize it one more time. Go check that account out if you're watching somewhere else. Yes. How old are you?
I am 25. I
Okay.
just have a question, really just one question.
You're welcome to ask, but are you able to justify abortion?
What? I just have a question. If you could
I'll
let me
answer
the
your question, but I ask people to justify abortion even if
Yeah,
I
yes,
allow
and
the
I'm
question because I only want to talk to opposition.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And what's your question? So typically when you understand something to be true, when you have ample justification for the action you seek to pursue or want to be protected under the positive law, when somebody asks you, can you justify something, you're pretty quick in your response. Yeah, I can. It's quite obvious you should be able to kill your kid, for example, or you should be able to procure an abortion. But even the slight hesitant reaction that we hear from this guest, I think, is telling about ultimately what most pro-choicers know to be the reality of the situation. But let's hear the rest of the conversation, see what she does.
So, do you believe that what do you think women's options are if they don't get an abortion? Do you think that they should just put that child up for adoption if they
No, I think
don't
they
think?
should raise their kid.
So what if they're not in a stable environment to raise a child in
They
the
should get into a stable environment.
and how do you suppose they do that? How do you're thinking every single person in the world, no
They
matter the
pray, hope,
circumstance,
and
they
work very hard.
pray?
Yes.
They pray?
Yes.
That's your response as a male.
That's part of my response. Yeah, I think praying is good. It's helped me a lot. I can give you very tangible experiences for you to really grasp,
Okay,
where
so,
prayer has fundamentally changed my life for the better. And it will change your life for the better, too, if you give it a shot.
so if I gave it a shot. Okay, I grew up very religious, and I can promise you that didn't pray any cancer away, things like that. But regardless, I won't go off on that. But
Prayer has been fundamental in our country. If you look at our founding fathers, you'll notice that oftentimes they would call for prayer before big decisions or before big meetings that were fundamental in the in determining the path forward for our very young nation. But it's not just a historical point, it is a point of the very present. We tragically had that plane that was hit by a helicopter in Washington, D.C., and even amongst the libs and the mainstream media, you heard thoughts and prayers. Prayer is a part of American life. It's a part of everybody's life, whether they like to admit it or not. And so for me to suggest to pray, I don't think is that outrageous as this guest wants to make it out to be. But of course, the querulous attitude, this direction, or rather this need to just whine about everything, I think is especially prevalent when you bring up anything that's even remotely religious. But let's hear how it goes. This is a very interesting conversation. And to some extent, it's a little funny because if you listen to my streams, I don't talk about divine revelation and my the need for a strong religious life really as much as I probably should. I mainly focused on argumentation that is more naturalistic in its character, let's say. And so when people start to gawk at any sort of religious notion, it does in some way bring a smile to my face because of reasons previously mentioned here already, but also because it's not that bad that I'm religious, and you shouldn't be super surprised that somebody is suggesting that you try to connect with God himself. I find it to be a very reasonable thing to implore people to do. So I think that also speaks to, the different worlds that we're coming to, or that we're approaching from when we're talking to these people. I mean, just the idea of prayer is just causing the demons to come out of this woman.
So you're saying that every person in the world, no matter the age or if they were assaulted, that they should just pray that they get into a better situation?
It's a simplification of what I said. I didn't say that they should just pray. There were other
Okay, what are the other
advice that I would give. You've asked me a general question. I gave you
then what are the other responses to that then?
Well, part of your question was somebody is in a situation that's not stable, and so I suggested we should do what is necessary to get them in a stable environment.
So if I was, let's say, 15 years old and my father assaulted me and I got pregnant, you're saying I should just pray that I get out of that situation?
That's not what I just said. So we're talking about the stability of the environment that women are in. You are fundamentally arguing, which is really disgusting, and I am going to harp on it a bit because you are being disingenuous with your responses. You're trying to
I'm not being disingenuous. You're just being...
Well, you are, because I haven't just spoken about prayer.
You're acting as if the
well,
world's
let me explain. Let me explain.
The world's not black and white.
You talked about the stability. You talked about the stability that the women, the situations of that the women are in. And I suggested that they should be in stable situations. Let's get them to that point. But what you have to argue is that women who are in unideal situations, the solution to that is for them to kill their kids, which is just so wicked. Why is the solution not to help them? Or are you fundamentally saying that it is helpful to a woman to kill her own kid?
Who is going to...
So, to some extent, we're talking about ideals here. She understands that deprivation has occurred, or at least there is something present in this situation when a woman is in an environment where she's lacking stability. That shouldn't be the way that it is. And so I'm pretty much just saying the commonsensical view, which is that we should get her to a position of stability. She herself should seek out stability and get into an environment that's going to give her the care that she needs to be the mother that she is. But from a very general standpoint, we should be helping her along with that as well. And it's not necessarily going to take the form of welfare, but it could potentially involve something like that. But she is kind of asking me general questions, and I'm giving general responses that should just make sense if you have a lick of common sense. And I think that she understands this in part because she shifts the conversation to talking about this very young girl, this 15-year-old that gets pregnant, and she's trying to say that, well, I would just suggest that that 15-year-old girl should just have to pray. But we weren't talking about a 15-year-old girl. We were talking about the basic principles that undergird the pro-life position. So that's where we were. She's kind of trying to pin something on me that I wasn't really talking about by bringing in the situation of a young girl, which is very common among pro-choicers, and that's why I called her out on it. But let's keep it going.
I want to know who you think is going to help.
What do you mean, who is going to help?
Who's going to help me out of that situation?
There are churches, there are pro-life organizations, there are pregnancy resource centers.
Talk about God.
You asked a question. Well, first of all, you obviously have an obstinate view to the divine. Fine. You don't like religion. You grew up religion.
No, he's not gonna fuck. I can't pray a baby away. I
don't think you know what obstinate is. That's not your response. Didn't make any sense.
Oh Jesus Christ. Oh God.
I don't think she knows what that word is. She does have an obstinate view to the divine. She wouldn't even probably consider a very rational argument for God's existence. But the first thing that I said is churches, in part because that is the greatest charitable force that exists in the world. That has been the case since the church came into existence, and it has continued on throughout the ages and to the present. So, yeah, churches are a big deal. In modernity, we don't think about the church as much as being the central institution that really does nourish the community, but that's the role that it plays. It's a vessel for our salvation, but it also is this institution that really does give to us in all sorts of ways. Yeah, that's kind of the practice you need to get into, is asking Christ for help. I'll reverse a little bit here. Because like religion, you grew up with someone.
No, he's not gonna fuck. I can't pray a baby away. I don't think you know what obstinate is.
That's not your response. Didn't make any sense.
Oh Jesus Christ! Oh God.
Yeah, that's kind of the practice you need to get into, is asking Christ for help. But here's what I'm telling you, is that me telling you that the church plays a role in charitable work is not saying that, okay, bend the knee to Rome now, which you should do, but it is me saying that is just true. The church is the greatest charity organization in the entire world. And I got ahead of myself. Conception, it just has been. We are the leaders probably a better word there. Charitable work. And so, yes, churches do help women in these situations. There's also pro-life pregnancy resource centers. There's also your family, if you've been blessed with one that is unified and healthy. So not everything is just, oh, James, sign this so that the government gives you money and this is going to help you or something. I'm not necessarily against some sort of government initiative that gives out money or something. Maybe that's what you're suspecting. But I do understand that you need a comprehensive amount of support, and that might come from churches, that might come from pregnancy resource centers, and you don't have to just hate God in such a way that you're completely blind to that obvious reality.
This is so funny coming from a man, seriously, genuinely. And earlier you were saying to the woman about how you don't understand about miscarriages as how they can't be traumatic or tragedy if you were pro-choice. Like how is that tragic and an abortion isn't? It's because a miscarriage is a pregnancy that I wanted, that failed, that I lost. Not necessarily. Baby. Okay, so because I got pregnant and I wanted that baby and it died, I'm not allowed to be sad about it, because if I got pregnant,
not what I just said.
Then explain yourself. Explain how that response.
Somebody might want to kill their baby, and then tragically the baby dies without them doing anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I have a miscarriage.
Not what you initially said.
That is exactly initially what I said. I said
It's not what she initially said. What she is saying is that somebody who gets a miscarriage wants their baby. But all I'm saying is that somebody might not want their baby, and then a miscarriage will happen. Now, people are going to probably think, James, you're being a stickler about language here. You're asking her to be a little bit too precise. We all know what she means, and maybe there's some validity in that critique. But ultimately, we do have to have a distinction between what the person is desiring and maybe what we can investigate and find to be concupiscence or rightly ordered desires versus what naturally is just happening. And a miscarriage is not going to be you desiring to have the baby and the baby always just dies, or on the other case, you don't want the baby and then somehow you can control through nature your baby to die, if you kind of get what I'm saying here. There's a difference here between what is going to happen by virtue of your nature, what's going to take place in this way, versus what you are going to desire to be the case. And that's going to be essential when we talk about the difference between miscarriage and abortion. So, yes, I maybe I'm giving her a hard time when I should just let her, speak a little bit imprecise, but I do think that this difference is worth noting here. It's not, and we have it on tape. So
I'm also recording. I don't care. Go back and watch it, James. I'm saying that if I have a pregnancy...
You know what? We are going to go back and watch it. Well, okay, I guarantee you tonight we will go back. Well, if I stream tonight, we will go back and watch it.
Can I get this point across?
I didn't want to do this the same night, but 2 days later we got here. Land the plane.
If I have a pregnancy that I want and I lose that fetus, I'm allowed to be sad about it. But if I'm also in another situation where I'm pregnant again and I don't want that child, I don't have to be sad about having an abortion.
You should feel sad.
I shouldn't.
You should.
I shouldn't.
Why shouldn't you?
Because that's my decision. It's my body. It's my choice. It's what I felt was right, and that's the decision I
Are
had
you
to make.
perfect?
No, no one is.
So you make poor decisions sometimes.
Everyone does, including
Have you
you by
felt
being
sad
on
about something that you
TikTok live as a grown man asking 18 and up people if they justify abortion when you're not a woman, you'll never will be, and you think that you can just dictate how other people should live their
I'm
lives
trying to
because
help
of
you.
a
So I think that this conversation is going to veer off into a different direction. But that question's really essential, and it's an easy one to press upon people who are essentially just saying that I desire to do something, and so let me do it, which is, in essence, what this interlocutor is arguing. And so, yeah, if you aren't perfect, you're going to make mistakes. And the fundamental political question is, are you entitled to make those mistakes? Should you be given a special privilege within the positive law to make a very evil mistake, if you even want to call abortion a mistake? But yeah, if you were perfect, then there really wouldn't be a conversation to be had here. You would just desire what is good and you would always pursue it in the properly ordered way. But that's just not the case. So it's not me trying to beat the pro-choicer down, but for this person to acknowledge that they make mistakes, they do things that are unjustly, and because it is a fallen world, you have to provide some justification, rightly reasoned argumentation that is going to demonstrate this is the correct thing to do.
prophet in the sky that you pray to that you think is going to help you when in reality
Well,
you're
he
just
is existence. So we're
he's
talking
not.
about
He is
what it
not.
means to.
He's not real, and you're not going to sit
He
here
is
and tell
real.
me abortion is wrong because you
I am
pray to
telling you
somebody.
abortion is wrong.
It's
I
not.
am telling you abortion is wrong, and I'll continue to do that.
It's not.
Talking about what I'm doing here today, this is necessary work, and we are fighting a very virtuous social battle. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to help you. Abortion's not going to be conducive to your flourishing, Adam. And you might believe that. You might gawk and get all sorts of annoyed and emotional about it. But people,
Not emotional. I just
you
fucking
don't want
hate men
people
like
in your
you.
life. Let me give you some wisdom that I think you ought to inculcate moving forward from this conversation. You don't want people in your life that are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Sometimes you need people to kind of shake you up a little bit and say, you know what? The way you're thinking is just wrong, and you need to
Because
do
that's
better.
your opinion.
You
Your
haven't made
opinion
you
is that it's
haven't made
wrong.
a you haven't made. It's my opinion in a way, but that's part of the political discourse here is that you propose something, you posit an idea, and then I'll posit my ideas, and we'll see whose ideas are better. And what I'm saying here, I think, is true about most people in my generation, most young people coming up, is that they are just pampered on as they are being instilled with this liberal ideology. They take it completely for granted, and when they are presented with an alternative worldview that just so happens to not allow for the justification of killing your kid in the womb, they are beyond broken. They can't handle it. And so that's what I think is happening here. It happens all the time on my lives, but in a very genuine fashion, I am trying to help this person. And although she might have felt shame after this interaction, although some people might say I was being a little mean to her, I do think in the long term, stuff like this is good. You do need to be told that you're wrong. I mean, it happens to me. It'll happen to me again. I engage in discussions all the time. I get things wrong. But you can't progress and become or get closer to your own perfection if at times somebody with more wisdom and a more rigorous set of views, a better understanding of reality, let's say, comes along and says, you're not doing this correctly. And that's going to come in different forms and different arenas. As a Catholic, I believe strongly in the teachings of the magisterium and our great tradition, and also just respecting our priests, our clergy. And oftentimes they say things that kind of shake me up. They rattle me a bit. But that's necessary for my moral formation, for my relationship with God. So that's just one way that we can look at your own perfection. But in other areas, maybe it's a teacher in college that tells you, you know what, you've been taught this for a long time, but really this is how you have to think about it. Or maybe somebody that presses you in a way that you weren't expecting it. It's all necessary for your ultimate, for you being more perfect than you were before. Argument, And everything that I'm saying is just accurate. The fact that the church does charity work, the fact that a woman in a destabilized situation should seek stability, these are commonsensical views. But for whatever reason, they're evoking you to gawk and get frustrated. And that just tells me that you're not only confused, but you're living in incredible disorder. And well, I'll pray for you tonight, even though you don't believe in that.
Okay, I hope that your prayers are answered to the.
I hope so too. I hope that you change.
Your imaginary God. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up. Oh man, this was a fun night. We don't usually. It's amazing to me. I'm always having the most fun when people come up and they're just completely rude and, being ridiculous. Okay, so we will jump into the next conversation. If you are watching over on TikTok or YouTube or X, make sure you check me out on the other platforms. I do appreciate you being here. We are watching clips from my most recent abortion live stream from TikTok. I've got 2 more clips to go, so hopefully you stick around. If you're on X specifically, if you don't mind sharing this stream, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm trying to do more of these, as well as a weekly stream that will be happening over in Catholic X. Not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. That is on the way. I think you're going to enjoy that a whole lot. There'll be segments where I'll probably talk about clips like this, but we'll also get into some of the political headlines and different tweets, and I don't want to spoil it too much. You'll just have to tune in so that you can enjoy it. Okay, we'll get into the second clip here. This one I have marked to... Where'd we go? This one I have marked at 7 minutes. Okay, so I think I marked this at 7 minutes. Yes, that's right, this picture. Okay. This individual came up, and they were immediately speaking in a highly jargonized, if that's even a word, but using intense jargon from the moment they entered onto my panel. And it was fine, but there was major misunderstandings of how both of us conceptualized the world, how we even conceptualized abortion as an issue itself. And so many of the beginning conversation here is just us disputing terms and fighting over things that I thought wouldn't be that interesting. But what is, I think, really important for us to talk about is what this individual ended up arguing coming from those machinations that they were espousing from the moment they got up on the panel. So let's hear what they had to say starting in about 7 minutes. Can you explain to me, or can you answer this question? Is it fundamentally perverted for the 33-year-old man to want to grape the little girl?
Yes.
And what's perverted about that?
Yeah, it's perverted.
So he brought up this case about a very young girl who was going to get graped using TikTok language. I don't know if they'll take the stream down if I don't use TikTok language, even though I'm sending it from a more universal spot. So I'll just use it for now, but just know the word I'm saying. Give the situation where a little girl was going to get graped by a much older man, and he was talking about how the girl, it would be wrong to grape the girl because it would go against the interests of the girl. And it seemed to me that by interests, he meant some sort of cognitive attitude that the girl possessed at the time. And so that's really where we are. We'll keep it playing.
That it's going to set back the interest of the little girl.
So something is wrong insofar as it goes against the girl's interests. And how do you understand the girl's interests?
If the girl's interest is to not to be graped, then yes, I would take that to be.
So if a little girl, and this is, I'm sorry I even have to talk about this, everybody, but this is just the nature of how these discussions go sometimes. If a little girl maybe desired to be violated in this disgusting manner, it's hard to even imagine. But let's say that she did. Would you say that's in her interest to be violated?
If she wanted that?
Yeah, if she wanted that.
I mean, at that point, I don't see how, wanting a violation is a violation, because usually violations come unconsensually. I think that's, it goes against the definition.
You have a 13-year-old girl, and she wants to be graped. Somebody grapes her.
That's what I'm saying.
That would be in her interest? You would say that then it would be justified?
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I'm saying, right? I don't think you can consent.
Wait, you're saying that's fine. I just want to make sure that... So here's what's happening here. He is taking a grape to only be a grape insofar as, I'm assuming he's thinking sex, is not consensually agreed to. But I understand grape to have a characteristic quality to it, an organization, a nature that is associated with it, which is to say that, yes, not consenting to sex is going to lead you to be in the case of grape. I don't disagree with that notion. However, there is a overall understanding we can have of grape that might not be a case where maybe it's a case where somebody is saying, yeah, I want this to happen, but we would still view it as this vile, disordered sexual conduct that somebody was engaging in. You know, somebody might agree to a perverted sexual practice and it would still be wrong. And so I'm viewing it as the nature itself, which oftentimes is associated with somebody not consenting to the sexual act, but I'm not limiting it to that because somebody might fantasize about and I know this is really strange to think about, but it happens. Somebody might fantasize about this disordered behavior, and that would still be a violation as I see it. But that's not how he sees it. He's taking it only to be a violation if somebody doesn't desire it to be the case. Now, this brings up another big issue in terms of consent when talking about a little girl, which might be quite obvious to you right now. But let's hear more of the conversation and find another point to jump in.
Because
you
I
are
think
saying,
you're making,
hold on,
I think you're confusing.
I want to make sure I'm not painting you in the wrong light. I don't want to misrepresent you. So let me just be very clear of what I'm at, which I don't want to be vain here, but that is something I tried to do is if people say something outrageous, I don't just jump on and say, oh, I gotcha, and I'm going to try to ruin your life. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to say your view again, that you understand what I'm asking to you, so that, you know, you might just say something that's so despicable and heinous, and that would be a clip, but I want to allow you to clear your name. So that's what I'm doing here. Of you. Are you telling me that if a 13-year-old girl wanted to be raped and somebody that was much older raped her, that because it was in line with her desires and interests, it would not be a violation of that girl? Is that what you are telling me?
Yeah, like I repeated, right? I don't think wanting it actually substantiates the definition of violation. You don't want a violation. That's like intrinsically true.
So I think he knows what I'm talking about. A young girl is having sex with an older man. I don't think you'll find anybody who is given such a situation who will say that that girl is not being violated. Of course she is being violated. Whether we call it grape or not, something wrong is happening here. But he's saying what I've just previously spoken to, which is that, well, really, it can't technically be called a violation because she wants it to be the case. Now, if I remember correctly, what he's going to do next is start to conflate another aspect of this conversation related to consent, but it's almost as if he doesn't understand that little girls can't fully consent. So we'll let it play a bit more and I'll jump in.
That's like saying that you can consent to grape. No, you can't.
My gosh, bro. This is what consent on steroids does. I mean, it's the liberal mind deracinating. It's the liberal mind deracinating man. Even from the most simplest moral standards.
You can't consent to grape.
Of course, it's a violation. She's a 13-year-old girl getting raped.
She can't consent to it. Literally can't.
Poochie, I made it very... So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the standard definition of grape that I think most people, even if you don't agree that there's a nature to the situation, you wouldn't package it in that scholastic framing. I think that you would at least agree that it doesn't matter if the girl desires to have sex with the older man, she's still being raped. She's still being violated. And that's really the point I'm making, but it's almost as if he doesn't know we're talking about the little girl anymore. But what he really does have to die on here is that essentially the interest is purely that which is in line with the desire that one internally has, or one has within their being, let's say. It's not maybe some more fundamental con-natural interests, maybe what your being is directed towards, but rather what the mind decides that they want to do. That's what he is focusing on when it comes to interest. But I don't take that view of interest. And this conversation is going to end short, but I would have liked to talk about that a bit more, is that he's just assuming that what is in your interest is in accord with what you desire. But but you might desire something to be the case, and that will go against your interests. Or you might desire something that is in accord with your interests. But that's a real distinction that ought to be discussed. And you said, yeah, man, that wouldn't be a violation.
I just explained it to you why it's impossible for her to consent to it. What?
You answered, man. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I asked it twice, and I made it clear, so.
Yeah, I just told you that in this situation,
so it's not a violation.
I want
and what
to
makes
be
it not a
raped
violation?
Doesn't make sense because a girl can't want to be raped. It goes against the definition of rape. Rape is unconsensual.
A girl can't want to be raped. A girl can obviously want to be raped. That has happened before. I'm sure it'll happen again. Nobody should take any joy in this. Of course, it's sexually perverted and not conducive to the beneficence of that girl or that young woman, but it happens. And he just said a girl might not want or will never want to be raped. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, it goes against the definition.
You don't think it's possible for a young girl to fantasize about disordered sexual practices?
No, because at that point, it would just mean she wants to act. If you say this person wants the
I think that you're
act,
limiting the definition of
consensual.
grape. Excuse me. I think you're limiting the definition of grape to only encompass things that somebody is specifically saying they don't want to happen, but there still is a grotesque nature to grape that we might understand and say, well, yeah, that person was violated, even though they were extremely confused and desired such a disgusting thing to happen to them. We can still say, yeah, that shouldn't have happened. That was a violation of that human being as a person. It doesn't matter if they wanted it to happen.
I can understand, but
you can't say that's fine.
Understanding where I'm getting from.
Okay, you consenting to it makes it not a violation. You can't agree with that.
Okay.
You're on. Which there's a lot in this conversation where, to some extent, we're talking past to each other. Maybe I'm missing a few points that he's making. He's certainly missing a lot of the metaphysical understanding that I have, or at least I'm positing to be true, which will happen when you have these discussions. It gets heated. We had just gone from a 7-minute, technical demonstration on both sides of the argument, trying to basically implore the other person to use our language, even though we didn't specifically ask the person to. We were basically fighting over terminology. But what is true about what I just said is that it is all about consent for him. And that's fundamentally going to be the liberal argument at a very basic level. That's the argument that the enlightened thinkers brought to the table, was that, the main thing here is consent, and that's going to be an innate understanding that you can gather just by virtue of being a human being. It will just be understandable through human reasoning, which we all share. It's not the only idea that they brought forth, but it's a big part of it. Whereas as a conservative, especially as a Catholic, I'm going to have different ways to understand what is moral, what is good, have a more, what I would say, vast and complex approach to discussing these issues. I might focus on the prescription of our ancestors, what has been passed down and tested through time. I might focus on the natural law, understanding these eternal truths that are embedded within nature and using reasoning in that way. But I certainly won't simplify everything down to one single machination about consent, which, at least this part of the conversation, was really what the interlocutor was trying to do. Your ontology is solely based on consent.
Wait, that's not what I said. I didn't justify him. No, that is not what I said. I didn't justify him doing this to the girl. I said, by definition, this is going to be incorrect. He can't violate someone that wants the violation. That is impossible.
Yes, he can. He can.
What? That
certainly
goes
can.
against the literal definition of it. What?
Because human being. So here, I'm not even using the word grape, or he didn't even use the word grape, but he's now is just looking even more erroneous, because if we're just talking about what it means to be violated, you can consent to something and be violated, at least under my view, which I think is more in line with common sense and, other ways of understanding the truth of the situation. But of course he doesn't agree. Let's hear how this finishes up. Are not just at the whims of their desires and what they say is true. There is an ultimate truth connatural to the being itself, and you can be violated even when you say that you want something disgusting to happen to you. So you fundamentally don't understand my ontology, but yours... Oh, he's gone offline. I didn't even kick him. We would have continued. But, I was getting really excited because I was going to talk about how I'm going to start discussing and analyzing some of these clips on stream instead of giving very intensive and rigorous discussion shortly after the chats wrap up. That's usually what I do, is I talk to people, and when it's done, I kind of give some brief analysis on how I thought it went, maybe some advice to pro-lifers, maybe some advice to the person I just talked to, or maybe a broad discussion where I implore the pro-choicers not to kill their kids. Sometimes a combination of all of those things. But yes, that's why I was getting so excited at the end. But I think we pretty much thoroughly covered that clip. I really wish, we got one more clip to go. I really wish I would have set up my chat correctly, because I can't even see the chat. Now, I don't know if anyone's saying anything on Twitter. I would hope people are saying stuff, but who knows? I hope you shared it, at least. I asked you to do that, and it would mean a lot. But I'm sure people are saying things on TikTok. However, it says open TikTok Live Center to get the chat going. Won't be able to do that right now, so I can't see your chat. I apologize, but if you're on TikTok, you can tap away. That will get more people to see the stream, and this will all be uploaded on YouTube after the fact, so you can watch it there as well. But we got one more clip to get through, and we'll jump into that. Short one. Yeah, yes. Okay. Alrighty, let's hear this one out. These aren't in order, by the way. I think the second clip, the one we just played, was the first conversation I had that night. And then this might be a conversation I had towards the end. Or maybe it was the next conversation. I don't remember. But you could probably judge by how tired I look. 2-3 hours talking to pro-choicers can add up.
Oh, okay. I'm actually live. Wow.
Really? Yeah.
So
how old are you?
I'm just going to make it really simple for you.
Wait, hold on. How old are you? How old are you?
How old am I? I'm 46.
Oh, okay. Right? How do you justify abortion? I have to ask the age for TikTok TOS. We don't want to be talking to minors. We certainly don't want to be taken down from TikTok because I didn't ask the age. So I adamantly question people for their age. I don't like to do that with women, but for this forum, I must.
How do I justify abortion?
Yes.
Because it's my life.
Excuse me?
It's my life. It's my life.
The baby has their own life, madam.
No, the baby has no life until I birth it. And I don't know if you've actually experienced a baby growing inside of you, but you haven't because you don't have a uterus.
I don't think that you have. So she's saying the baby has no life until I give birth to the baby. But notice even the way she's speaking about the baby. You know, we might say that when you are alive, you are actualizing some identity that is demonstrative of that life. And how we might represent that identity is the way we speak about said being, which is to say that we might call a human being that is being animated by the soul, which is alive, a baby, or even a human being, or a child, or an adult. These are all identifiable of the kind of thing that both has the matter, the body of a human being, and is being animated by a human soul. Now, if you weren't talking about an alive human being, you probably wouldn't call the baby a baby. You would call it a corpse or a dead baby because it has taken on a different identity, a different form, if you would like to use the more classic jargon there. And that is of this thing, this matter that is not being animated by a soul. And so even the fact that she's calling it a baby that's not alive but is yet to be born seems to suggest that she really is talking about something that is alive, because she might use a different word if the baby was dead. She wouldn't call a dead baby just a baby. There'd be reason to be particular here and say, yeah, no, this is a corpse. Either because you just said that the baby's not alive. And any mother that has ever gave birth, any mother that has ever had a baby gestating.
I'm speaking now, sir. I'm speaking now, sir. I'm a mother.
In an erroneous fashion, okay? And I'm now going to hit you with the reality of the situation. I know it's hard, but just hang on. We'll correct what you're saying.
I'm telling you why I have had an abortion for medical reasons, and I can justify it.
Okay, we're not talking about you needing an abortion for medical reasons. You claim that the baby is not alive, which seems to suggest you don't know what pregnancy is. The baby must be alive. How is it growing?
Sir, how can you tell a woman who's had 3?
So I'm trying to get the conversation to the point of talking of the nature of the baby. If the baby is not alive, then how is it growing? It's a very basic question that any pro-life activist has been trained to ask, because it's essential to this conversation. Are we talking about a dead baby or an alive baby? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to say that the baby is dead. So I think if you're a pro-lifer, you're well aware of what I am trying to do here. But of course, this person is just being stubborn, and she doesn't really want to talk about the issue. She wants to vent and be mad at me. I think at this point, I probably had 5 or 6 people waiting in the guest box, which isn't a ton. But when you're waiting and you're hearing all the conversations, I do understand how you might get worked up. And then once you come up, you really feel like you got to really unleash hell on the host, myself. So I'm even trying to give her grace here. But, this is a political discussion, and close to 1 million children died last year in the United States of America due to the opposition's ideas. And so we have to also be serious about it, and you can't just be controlled by your emotions.
Children inside of her and giving birth to 2 children, I don't know what pregnancy is.
Because clearly your judgment. Because clearly,
do you not have a mother? Were you
born well, you asked a question. Would you like me to answer the question, or would you prefer to continue to talk?
You are ridiculous. And this whole
I understand that this is a very emotional thing, madam. But what I would encourage you to do,
you can't even talk to a woman
madam,
with
excuse
any
me,
respect.
excuse me, madam. I'm going to ask you to stop talking so that I can respond.
This entire thing is a farce, and everyone knows it.
Madam, I'm going to ask you to stop talking so that I can respond. Clearly, you're delusional.
Frankly,
you're delusional, and you can't control your emotions. I would encourage you to work on this.
Because she's going to be abused and not respected.
I don't want anybody to be abused. Have I ever said that?
No, yes, you do.
So I'm trying to have a discussion that is rooted in substance. A discussion where we try, even together, and oftentimes I'm quite affable, even though I might seem a little mean here, but I strive to be affable, kind, and respectful with my interlocutor, and truly engage in an investigation about what is occurring here when we're talking about a pregnancy and when we're talking about an abortion. And typically, the conversations don't go like this. But here, of course, this person's not interested in that whatsoever. And what is fascinating is that she's talking to me in such a disrespectful way. Yes, I'm firing back. I'm giving out my jabs and crosses, and I'm not just getting, I'm not just going to get beat the crap out of. I'm going to hit back a little bit. But then she starts calling me abusive. And so, if I remember correctly, I have a response to that.
Because you don't believe that women are humans, sir.
I don't. I think, though, that you might be a bit abusive. You're abusing me by not even letting me speak. You actually are abusing. You don't understand it right now, but you're being abusive to me.
I don't know if you understand that. It relies on a woman's body.
I will let you speak. You asked me a question. So I muted her because it's either mute or kick her off the stream. This isn't really beneficial to anybody. But what I think is a fairly astute point, she is abusing me. This is my platform. And if you've ever watched my streams, I give pro-choicers ample time to represent themselves. At the end of every conversation, if it was a cordial and productive convo, no matter who looks better in the moment, I allow pro-choicers a closing statement. I say, you know what? I don't think we agree. I don't think you really understand what I'm saying, but go ahead, take a minute. Say what you have to say. That's how I run these lives. And so, yes, there's some back and forth. There's some interruption, usually from both sides. But in the end, I do try to keep a very high degree of integrity here. To be spoken to in this way while I'm giving her a platform, this wasn't a very popular stream this night, but there were still, I think, maybe 100 people watching at the time. I think it's just this sense of entitlement that because I am a woman, because I ultimately just arrogantly have views about what it means to be a woman, but also what my so-called innate rights to kill my child are, I'm going to just talk to you and treat you however I want to. And honestly, it's just a bad practice for anybody to engage in when having this discussion. And if you're a pro-lifer, you know all of this. This isn't super novel or anything. But it's worth talking about that we're dealing with people that aren't even keeping to the basic political norms that we expect people to adhere to when engaging in political discourse of this kind. And you didn't let me answer. In a way, you're being abusive because you're trying to misrepresent me and paint me in this very negative light on my own live when I'm giving you a platform to talk, only in front of 90 people, but nonetheless, there is an opportunity here to share your views. I will let you give your thoughts. I'm not going to take that away from you, but you have to let me respond. It's very disingenuous and frankly evil to do what you are doing. And you need, as a political animal, that of the rational kind, you need to control your emotions and understand that, yes, this is a personal issue for a lot of women, but there is a reasonable way we might pursue it and understand that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Okay? So I'll let you respond, and then we can continue. Oh, I think you jumped off. I can't even unmute you anymore. I guess I can't unmute you because you're out of the app. So you have to come back into the app, and then I'll unmute you, okay? And she never came back. God's divine providence coming through, as always. Maybe it was just time to move on from that person. I don't like having to mute people. First of all, I think optically it looks bad. You're talking to somebody and you have to mute them. If you're in person, you can't just mute somebody. So for that reason, it's not something I pursue that often. However, I'm not afraid to use it because I do have to be productive in what I'm doing here. There's a purpose to what I'm doing. I am able to have a bit of fun with it and converse with these people. And oftentimes we do leave these conversations, we being myself and their interlocutor, I think having a better understanding of each other and being on somewhat cordial grounds amongst each other. So that's something that I am actually very proud of. That's out of all the faults that I have, I think that's something I don't have to worry about a whole ton. But if somebody's just getting rowdy, I'm going to use the mute button. It's at my disposal. There's a purpose for it. There's a purpose for what I'm doing here, but, sometimes you are just being irrational and hyper emotional, and, that's the best I can do to try to guide the conversation. And sometimes you'll be in this situation, you'll mute them, I'll give this exposition as I just did here, and this person, whoever it may be, will come back and they'll be fine. In this case, she was out of the app, so I couldn't even unmute her, and then she just dropped. So she was very frustrated, but oh well. I'll pray for her too. I'll pray for her tonight like I did a few nights ago. So that is it. Now, what I would like to do is read the comments. However, the comments are not in my Streamlabs. So here's what I'm going to do. Everybody just stick tight. There might be 2 people here. There might be 10 people here. Who knows, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can sneak and see if anyone has said anything. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. And that'll be it for tonight. But I don't want it to be it for tonight because I want to see if anyone has said anything in the comments. I know people have probably said stuff over on TikTok, but I don't have that set up at the moment. So here, we'll do this. We'll open this up. Yeah, I think I'll have to set this up at some other point. So, okay. All right, well, I think that'll be it then, everybody. So I hope you appreciated this discussion, this analysis of these conversations. Please let me know if you enjoyed it, if you want me to do it again. I probably will do it again, whether you say you want it or not. But, maybe give some suggestions on how it could be done better. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this stream, I will be hosting a weekly space in Catholic X starting a week from Wednesday. It will be anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour long, maybe doing segments where we talk about some of these conversations that I'm having over on TikTok, giving some analysis when the time is right, but also some of the political headlines of the day, trying my best to represent the Catholic social teaching and the other ideas that I have been inculcating and developing behind the scenes. And then the other part of that, for those of you that might want to join, is that afterwards I'll jump into a space exclusively in Catholic X where we can all talk about the ideas and topics that I brought up that day on the stream. So make sure you're in Catholic X. Great community. I highly recommend you join, but also make sure you're following so that you don't miss that stream when I go live. Alrighty. So again, it's weird to be live and feel like I'm talking to nobody because I can't see the chat. I could be talking to nobody, but either way, I had a fun time, and hopefully nobody had a wonderful time as well. No, I'm sure somebody is out there. May God bless you all. I will probably be live on TikTok tomorrow, and then, like I said, Catholic X Space a week from this Wednesday. I will probably do another stream of this kind before that space kicks off. But until next time, God bless you, take care, have a good night, and I will see you around.